All right.
Okay.
So hi there. I'm Jaymes Grace, and I'm an honor student at Pima Community College, and also founder of Save Our Served. And I'm sitting down today with retired Air Force Master Sergeant Tiesha Glover. And Tiesha, thank you for taking the time to sit and talk to me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, certainly. So let's just jump right into it. You're retired from the U.S. Air Force. What was your role in the Air Force?
So I started out as a medical technician when I enlisted, and the medical technician is kind of like the jack of all trades when it comes to the medical career. So most of my career was working in the clinics. I did family health clinics, pediatric clinics, checking in patients, preparing people for deployments, making sure immunizations were up to date. Some of my career was inpatient, where you have mainly overseas. I worked for an inpatient unit. So again, really just a jack of all trades in military healthcare.
Wow. Oh, okay. And and you had mentioned to me previously that you did work in the mental health arena. Can you tell me a
Correct.
little bit more about that?
Yeah, so that was almost like a fluke because for my career, I normally wouldn't have worked in mental health. Like we're trained in mental health, but I was working in an environment where it was hard to get like mental health clinicians into it. This was at Minot Air Force Base.
Hmm.
So it's not a desirable base. It's a northern tier base with, extreme temperatures. So
Uh,
a lot of people, if they were eligible to retire, they would rather retire than to take that assignment. So it
oh,
got to the point where they didn't have anyone to manage the clinic. So I went to my commander and I said, I have enough mental health background. I'm not going to be diagnosing patients, but I can manage the clinic until we can get someone, full time in there. So that actually ended up being about a year and a half until we got
okay.
someone in. So I functioned as the Air Force calls it a flight chief, which for civilians, I think that would be closest to maybe a administrative or business office manager. Because
Okay.
again, I wasn't diagnosing patients, but I was managing the schedules for the mental health providers and
Hmm.
kind of managing the outreach activities to make sure that people knew what services that they provide.
Okay. All right. I just have a question. You mentioned that you help get airmen ready to go be deployed.
Yeah.
Were you involved in working with them when they returned?
Yes. Yeah, so a lot of what we did was when they would come back, they would fill out surveys and they would fill
Hmm.
out surveys about their experience. And based on that experience, we would refer them to different clinics and different type of care.
Okay, all right. And did you see many that would mention anything in regard to any type of like mental health type issues, like depression or anything else that they might have had?
Yes and no. I saw it a lot, but what I think was even more interesting is that sometimes you would know, because a lot of times these were people that I worked with as well. Like you would know that there was something wrong, but they didn't report it.
Mm,
So I did see it reported among some people, but I think more often it existed, but they didn't report it.
okay, all right. Yeah, I'm gonna share something with you here. And this is from a posting in January of 2020 from George Mason University, Mason Veterans and Service Members Legal Clinic, United States homelessness statistics. In 2014, at minimum, 25% of the homeless on the street on any given night, about 140,000 individuals, are seriously mentally ill. Additionally, 45% of the homeless on the street, about 250,000 individuals, suffer from any mental illness. While these numbers are not limited to veterans, mental illness is also a factor in the rate of veteran homelessness. 20% of veterans who have returned from Iraq or Afghanistan suffer from post traumatic stress disorder or major depressive disorder. In addition, 19.5% of those who suffer from either post traumatic stress disorder or major depressive disorder also suffer from traumatic brain injury in service. So that kind of is a little bit of what you were just touching on.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what I'm touching on because those numbers are staggering, but I think what's even more staggering is that that's only capturing what's been reported and who's actually diagnosed. So that
Okay.
goes back to that question that you asked about how many people reported it. The military, it's so much better than it was. My career spanned 20 years. So from the Air Force that I joined in 1996 and left in 2016, as it relates to mental health, it came a long way, but still a long way to go. A lot of times, military people didn't report depression or any type of mental health concerns because it could negatively impact their career. And anytime you want to have a special assignment or something like that, you have to get your record reviewed. And if they see anything about visit the mental health clinic, that could put you at risk of not getting that assignment. And earlier in my career, it was more of the stigma, like
Right.
there's a phrase in the military, suck it up, press on. And that essentially says you don't show what they would consider weakness. Resiliency was one of those words that was thrown around. And being resilient is not bad, but it had a negative connotation because it was used to say you shouldn't have any type of need for help. You should just be strong in this. So because that type of culture, was very prevalent, a lot of people didn't report it. And you didn't really have a supervisor that would outright chastise you for going to mental health, but you would see it manifest in other ways. It would be cliques and you wouldn't be involved in that cliques. Assignments would come up and you wouldn't be. So a lot of people just did not. They coped in unhealthy ways is what would happen. And that's why I say those numbers, it's as staggering as it is, I bet it's even more because of the amount that goes undiagnosed, unreported, and then therefore undiagnosed.
Right. Yeah. And so it's just easy to extrapolate what happens.
Yes.
If you're not diagnosed.
Yes.
And you have this mental illness,
Yeah.
and you've gone through, particularly if you've gone through like a war zone.
Yes.
And then you get out.
Yeah.
I can imagine the trauma that you have and how that mental illness is going to impact you.
And you know what else is very interesting? A lot of mental illness, it will manifest kind of in early adulthood. And that's the same age that most people join the military. I joined at 18. I joined right out of high school. That 18 to, early to mid 20s, it's difficult enough, you know, and then you throw in the military lifestyle. And as much as I love the military, and it's a lifestyle, it's not just a career, and it is challenging, you know. So just think of being at that still impressionable age, and a lot of times the mental health conditions can manifest, and it can be exacerbated by the stress that you feel in the military. So it's like when you need it the most, when you need the diagnosis the most, you're not going to seek treatment. So that is also a catalyst for how long do people go without the diagnosis, without the treatment, and it's just getting worse. So then we have these conditions like homelessness, or just people losing so much because they're not seeking and getting the care that they need.
And even worse, the increase in military suicides.
Yes. And the military, you think about it, the military accounts for such a small demographic, but they make up so much when you talk about homelessness, when you talk about suicide. So that's not a coincidence.
The numbers are incredibly disproportionate. Now, from that same post, it said considering 45% of those who are homeless suffer from any kind of mental illness, and less than 50% of veterans who are suffering from mental illness seek treatment. A considerable number of veterans are homeless, are suffering from untreated mental illness. So exactly, what you're speaking about.
And another part to that, having worked in the military healthcare system, it's complicated. Navigating, even knowing how to get help. So let's say that you didn't get the help when you were on active duty or when you served, and now you're in that position where you're homeless. You may even be eligible for benefits, but not even know how to access them, or not even have, not even know how to reach out to different organizations that could help you. So it's just, it's just compounding issues, So, because I worked in military healthcare, and even now, most of my care is at the VA, and it's so much better now. But a lot of things are technology based too, and everyone is not. Some people don't even have access. So a lot of things going to technology, like it should be very easy for people to seek care. Like you shouldn't have to really jump through hoops. And even though it's better, I'm someone that's tech savvy, so a lot of things are accessible to me. But I'm thinking of people who are not, know, and you shouldn't have to have that skill in order to get the help that you need.
Yeah, it would be great if there were alternatives, and there should be. So I do know a lot of work is being done to help treat mental issues among our homeless veteran population. Um, it, I think the struggle is still, or the question I have is like, what's going on inside the military right now? You know,
Yeah.
as far as are service people getting the treatment that they need now,
Yeah.
perhaps more than they have been previously?
It's definitely better. And I can say that because when I retired, I had to go through TAPS, the Transition Assistance Program.
Uh-huh.
And a significant portion of that was dedicated to asking about your housing after you retire. And as a matter of fact, every year they send me this survey. It's voluntary, but they're asking about how I transition. What is your housing situation?
Okay.
What is your mental health? So
Yes.
every year since I've retired, I've taken part in that.
Wow.
And I think back to my dad served in Vietnam, and there was no such thing.
All
When
right.
he left Vietnam, there was no follow up on mental health. There was, and that you definitely need it. Every it's always needed, but
Right. Yes.
you think of during that time, and such a thing didn't exist. So
Yeah.
to see it now, and it was very blatant. They asked those questions. What specifically are your plans? Where do you plan? What is your housing situation? And even when I go to my VA appointments now, they ask that question. What is your
Wow.
housing situation? What is
Yes.
this? What's your mental health like? So I'm confident that it's so much better.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
still have to say there's a ways to go because we still have the problem still exists.
Right.
But I can definitely say in the last 2 decades I've seen improvement.
Well, that
Even
is.
just talking about mental health,
Yeah.
even
Well,
just
right.
talking like that, that's so basic, but that's a
Yeah.
significant improvement because
Yeah.
I served in a time where you didn't talk about it.
Right.
You did not talk about, oh, my mental health is not okay. Like you would
Right.
never hear, there was a time when you would never hear someone say that. But now I think it's very, it's not, it wouldn't be so outrageous for someone to say that. And I credit our youth a lot. I think that's part of our society getting better about it, but our young people are very good about putting mental health first. So I think that has helped us a lot, especially for people like it's a transition. Older generations are, especially in the military, it was a different culture then.
Right.
So I do see the culture shift happening.
Yeah. Well, that is very encouraging.
Yeah,
to
that's
hear.
encouraging. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's encouraging.
Your insights have been great, and this is going to be very helpful for us to be able to
I'm
share
glad.
with people.
I'm glad.
I wanted to ask you: is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to share?
I think we've covered a lot. The only thing, I guess I would ask the question, what do you think that, like a lot of times it's military helping military, which it should be. What can other people do? Because my perspective is, all of the military. Is it
Yes.
education? Is it like how can people who may not have served, like how can they help? Is it beneficial for them to help?
Yeah, and that's a very good question, and one of the reports I was reading actually mentioned that community service organizations are needed to help
Yeah.
support the work that's being done
Yeah.
by the VA.
Yeah.
And like the organization that I'm founding,
Yeah.
Save Our Serve, will be one of those community
Yeah.
organizations. And we have several
Yeah.
here in Tucson, and I'm hoping to also support those organizations. And someone might find something from our side that inspires them to start their own work as well. So as people get involved and volunteers and all of that, I mean it would definitely make a difference.
Oh, that's going to be great. And I think that's so important because what you've touched on is it's really about the partnerships. Military, you know the culture if you've been affiliated with the military or if you've served, but you still need those partnerships. You still need those allies, as we call them. We still need the civilian allies. So,
Right.
So I'm so glad to be a part of this. Like I just know that it's going to be great, and it's so needed. It's so needed.
Yeah. I mean, we really appreciate, and I don't think we mentioned that Tiesha is going to be working with Save Our Served, and actually has already come on as a board officer.
Yeah.
And so, your dedication is continuing. I mean, I just want to personally thank you and your family, for having served.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to continue to serve. So I appreciate it.
But thank you. All right, Tiesha. Well,
All
thanks
right.
so much.
Thank you.